Hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of WION Live Broadcast. I'm Simon Marks from Washington, D.C. Let's start with the top headlines of the day. Pakistan's army chief meets Prime Minister Imran Khan as the opposition prepares to topple his embattled government with a key coalition partner deserting the ruling party. The Kremlin plays down hopes of a breakthrough following yesterday's peace talks in Istanbul, saying there was nothing too promising to emerge from the discussions with the Ukrainians. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urges Norway, the second largest supplier of gas to Europe behind Russia, to deliver more energy to his country and to the European Union. Britain's Health Secretary apologises after a damning report revealed that more than 200 babies could have survived had they been given better care at birth. Iran has once again denied women entry to a football stadium to watch an international fixture, leaving hundreds of ticketed soccer fans locked out, according to Iranian media. And a US astronaut and two Russian cosmonauts have returned to Earth together as tensions between Moscow and the West soared over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We begin today here in Washington, where President Biden yesterday signed an historic anti-lynching law. It's the first federal legislation declaring lynching a federal hate crime in the United States, after over a century of civil rights groups rallying behind the measure. The legislation is named after 14-year-old Emmett Till, who was brutally murdered in a racist attack in Mississippi in 1955. The incident drew national attention to the atrocities and violence that African Americans faced. It further galvanized the U.S. civil rights movement. President Biden signed the bill at a desk in the White House Rose Garden and thanked an invited audience of civil rights leaders, Congressional Black Caucus members and other guests. Both the president and vice president delivered remarks to mark the moment.
So today we are gathered to do unfinished business, to acknowledge the horror in this part of our history, to state unequivocally that lynching is and has always been a hate crime, and to make clear that the federal government may now prosecute these crimes as such. Lynching is not a relic of the past. Racial acts of terror still occur in our nation. And when they do, we must all have the courage to name them and hold the perpetrators to account.
No federal law expressly prohibited lynching. None. Until today, from the bullets in the back of Ahmaud Arbery to countless other acts of violence, countless victims known and unknown. The same racial hatred that drove the mob to hang a noose brought that mob carrying torches out of the fields of Charlottesville just a few years ago. Racial hate isn't an old problem. It's a persistent problem. A persistent problem.
The Senate passed the bill by unanimous consent on March the 7th, nearly 1 month after the House passed it. Congress had failed to pass anti-lynching legislation more than 200 times. Vice President Kamala Harris was a prime sponsor of the bill when she sat in the Senate. Lynching can be prosecuted under the law when the authorities believe a conspiracy to commit a hate crime has led to death or serious bodily injury. The law lays out a maximum sentence of 30 years in prison plus fines. Its champion is Representative Bobby Rush of Illinois, and for him, yesterday was a career-defining achievement.
I thought surely I would have been dead before I was 30 years old because of my activism in the 60s. But here I am today, on my way to the White House, where the president is going to sign the immaterial Anti-lynching Act that I sponsored. What a remarkable day.
The Capitol Hill insurrection from January the 6th of last year is back in the news again today. This time, the murky details of former President Donald Trump's phone call records are attracting attention. They have finally made their way into the hands of the Congressional Committee investigating the violent uprising by his supporters. But there's a surprise. On the day of the attack, there is a gap of almost 8 hours in the former president's phone records. A 457-minute pause was recorded from 17 minutes past 11 in the morning until 6 minutes to 7 at night. This includes the period when the Capitol building was being stormed by Trump's mob. The National Archives is the government agency that handed 11 pages of records to the Congressional Select Committee. The documents show that Trump called 8 people on the morning of January the 6th and 11 people in the evening. But conversations previously disclosed that the former president had with allies in Congress as the riot was taking place are mysteriously absent from the record. So, investigators are now looking into whether Trump used unofficial back channels to communicate, or perhaps even burner phones on the day in question. They are, of course, cheap, hard-to-trace prepaid cell phones designed to be thrown away after use, very popular with drug dealers. Former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon spoke with Trump twice on January the 6th. And remember, just 24 hours earlier, on his own podcast, Bannon warned that all hell is going to break loose tomorrow. Last November, it was reported that organisers of the Stop the Steal rally allegedly used burner phones to communicate with high-ranking members of Trump's inner circle, including the former president's son Eric, his daughter-in-law and former campaign official Lara Trump, and also White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. In a statement yesterday, Trump said that he has no idea what a burner phone is. Never heard of them, he said. According to the Presidential Records Act, written communications relating to the president's official duties, like emails, memos, and a diary logging his phone calls, must be preserved and are public property. Last month, Trump lost his bid to stop the archives from releasing a raft of documents from his time in office, and the archives revealed that some of the papers handed over to them had been torn up by the former president, requiring archive staff to tape them back together. Meanwhile, the United States is set to roll out another COVID-19 booster to try and kick the nation's immunity up a notch. This time for people aged 50 and above. The move comes amid the threat of the Omicron BA2 variant. It is now the dominant strain here in the United States. The Food and Drug Administration said that the over 50s can seek a 4th dose at least 4 months after their previous booster. The agency said that especially fragile groups can also get an additional 5th booster, but did not insist on the immediacy of getting one.
It's not a straightforward answer as to when the optimal timing of this fourth dose would be. Ideally, it would be before a surge, but that's difficult to predict, and we don't know what the coming weeks to months will look like here in the United States, although some are predicting an increase in cases with the BA2 variant, subvariant of Omicron. But it may be, for some individuals, best to wait until the fall, perhaps when they get their influenza vaccine, in an expectation that we'll see kind of a winter surge of a respiratory virus like SARS-CoV-2.
Until now, the FDA had cleared fourth doses only for people 12 and older with severely weakened immune systems. About 2/3 of Americans are fully vaccinated using the old two-shot yardstick, but fully half of those eligible for a first booster have still not received one.
Just looking at, the proportion of those individuals who've received the third booster dose, it's only about half in that 50 to 64-year-old age group. So we'll have to see what the demand is, particularly as transmission is low in the United States.
To evaluate an additional booster, US officials looked at Israel's COVID-19 vaccination record. It made a fourth dose available to people 60 and older during the Omicron surge. The FDA said no new safety concerns emerged after a review of 700,000 fourth doses that had been administered. Next week, the government will hold a public meeting to decide if the fourth dose should be offered to everyone, regardless of age.
Thank you so much.
The Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Hsien Loong, was welcomed to the White House yesterday by President Biden. The two leaders discussed Russia's invasion of Ukraine and China's role in the Indo-Pacific. President Biden insisted his administration remains focused on the Indo-Pacific region, even as it grapples with the distraction of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Hosting Singapore's Prime Minister in the Oval Office, Biden said the world's rules-based order faces unprecedented challenges. In joint remarks from the White House following their meeting, Biden said the US partnership with Singapore is as close and as strong as it's ever been. He also added that the two nations together are working to uphold a rules-based international system. Biden reiterated his strong commitment to ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. He said the United States is forging strongly ahead on its growing Asia-Pacific priorities, despite the situation in Ukraine.
The U.S. has played an important
Even as we address other crises in Europe, my administration is strongly supportive of moving rapidly to implement the Indo-Pacific strategy we've talked about. And the United States is a proud Indo-Pacific nation. It's clear that Putin's war is an unacceptable to nations in every region of the world, not just Europe, but in every region of the world. It's an attack on the core international principles that underpin peace and security and prosperity everywhere, including in the Indo-Pacific. Today, Singapore and the United States are united and sending the message to all nations, regardless of their size or population. They are equal in their rights on the global stage. They have a right to sovereignty and territorial integrity and to determine their own future free from violence and intimidation.
Prime Minister Lee expressed his appreciation for US leadership in the Indo-Pacific. He underscored Singapore's shared commitment to a stable, rules-based system. He urged closer ties between the United States and ASEAN. The war against Ukraine loomed large. Russia's attack has deeply shocked US allies beyond Europe, including Australia and Japan. Condemning the unprovoked attack by Russia on Ukraine, Singapore's leader warned the war could have implications for the Asia-Pacific.
The war in the Ukraine has implications for the Asia-Pacific. There are potential flashpoints and contentious issues in our region too, which, if not managed well, could escalate to open conflict. Countries with interests in the region need to pursue all efforts to settle disagreements through peaceful means so that we can avoid reaching a point of no return.
The Biden administration has repeatedly characterized the Asia-Pacific region as America's #1 strategic priority because of the rising profile of China. The Biden administration announced an Indo-Pacific strategy last month, vowing to commit more diplomatic and security resources to the region to counter what it sees as China's bid to grow its regional influence. Biden was due to host ASEAN leaders in the US this week, but that summit was postponed. He is now expected to host the ASEAN leaders here in Washington for a special summit at some point this spring.
And that supply chain system almost entirely in the hands.
Moving now to the space race between Washington and Moscow. It was one of the defining aspects of Cold War rivalry, but the International Space Station that so many of us often forget is in orbit above us was launched way back in 1998 and has long been a symbol of US-Russian collaboration. So, how will Russia's invasion of Ukraine change things up in space? Our next report fills you in.
The successful launch of Sputnik in 1957 by the Soviet Union was the beginning of the space age. The Soviet success sent shockwaves in the United States. In 1961, the Soviet Union again stole the lead by sending Yuri Gagarin, the first man, into space.
Sequence has started.
And in 1969, the United States made history with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin as the first humans to step onto the moon. The first collaboration between the Soviets and the Americans came in 1975. US astronaut Tom Stafford and Russian cosmonaut Alexei Leonov docked their separate spacecrafts together and shook hands.
When we started, we were competing with each other, and that was one of the reasons we were so successful at the beginning of human spaceflight. And as time went on, we realized that by working together, we could achieve even more. And of course, that's continuing to this day, and I hope that'll continue into the future.
The first module of the International Space Station was launched in 1998. It is a multinational collaboration that has established a permanent human presence in space. Astronaut Mark Van der Hee, who has spent 355 days at the International Space Station, will be returning back to Earth in April in a Russian capsule. But has Russia's invasion of Ukraine changed things for the astronauts in space? Bill Nelson, the administrator at NASA, insists it is business as usual at the ISS.
That's just Dmitry Rogozin. He spouts off every now and then, but at the end of the day, he's worked with us. But I can tell you all the other people that work in the Russian civilian space program, they're professional. They don't miss a beat with us American astronauts and American mission control.
But on the ground, the war in Ukraine has resulted in cancelled spacecraft launches and broken contracts. The European Space Agency has confirmed that it is indefinitely suspending its ExoMars rover mission with Roscosmos. For the time being, though, the International Space Station appears secure despite the war. But more tensions on the ground and more sanctions from the West could push the International Space Station into deeper frontiers of uncertainty. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Hatch opening occurring at 4:48 p.m.
Shifting our focus to Israel now, it is witnessing back-to-back violent incidents. In the latest, 5 people were killed on the outskirts of Tel Aviv after a gunman started shooting people on the street. That's the 3rd deadly attack in Israel within the span of a week. It took place in the ultra-Orthodox town of Bnei Brak. Residents say that a man drove around and opened fire at passers-by. The gunman was later shot dead by Israeli police. An eyewitness described the harrowing incident.
הייתי עם 2 ילדים שלי למטה בדשא, עלינו הביתה, נכנסו למיטות, אני מתחילה לשמוע פיצוצים. הבית שלי כזה רעד, הייתי בטוחה שזה פגזים של פורים שנשארו. זה ממשיך, אני מגיעה פה לחלון של הבית. אני רואה כאן את המחבל, ממש ממול הבית שלי, עם M16 גדולה כזאת. באותו שנייה משכתי את שתי ילדים, אני שומעת, הקולות של הירי לא מפסיקים. הבית פשוט רועד, משלוש זירות שונות, שומעים את זה מכל הכיוונים. השכנים פה צורכים, פיגוע ירי. נכנסתי לחדר, הסתגרנו בחדר.
While no one has claimed responsibility for the latest attack, the shooting on Tuesday raises the number of people killed by gunmen in Israel in the recent spate of attacks to 11. It's the deadliest spike on city streets for years. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett threatened tough action to deal with the perpetrators.
אלה ימים קשים. בכל כמה שנים מדינת ישראל מתמודדת עם גל טרור. אחרי תקופה של שקט ישנה התפרצות אלימה של אלה שמנסים לכלותנו. אלה שרוצים לפגוע בנו בכל מחיר. שהשנאה שלהם ליהודים, למדינת ישראל, מעבירה אותם על דעתם.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, based in the West Bank, issued a rare condemnation of the attack, saying the killing of Israelis and Palestinians would only lead to a worsening of the situation. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken was in the country on Tuesday and has condemned the attack, calling the recent spate of violence unacceptable. A shooting on Sunday killed 2 Israeli police officers in the northern city of Hadera. That attack was later claimed by Islamic State, making it the group's first claim of responsibility for a deadly assault in Israel since 2017. The attacks near Tel Aviv also come as Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz is visiting Jordan. He met King Abdullah in a bid to ensure calm in the Palestinian territories during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. This caution is due to tensions which flared last year in April between Israeli forces and Palestinians visiting the Al-Aqsa Mosque in East Jerusalem. That violence spiraled into an 11-day conflict between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, people gathered today at the site of one of the recent shootings to protest, and some of them called for Prime Minister Bennett to resign. WION's correspondent Jodie Cohen visited Bnei Brak, where the latest shooting occurred, and sent us this report.
So I'm actually in Bnei Brak at the scene of one of the attacks. You can see behind me there are a number of candles on the ground in memorial to the people who were killed. These include 5 people we know have died, 1 Arab Israeli policeman, 2 fathers of young children, including one father who was actually out walking his toddler in a stroller and shielded his toddler and saved his life. And he's left behind that son and his wife, who was also pregnant, and also a son of a prominent rabbi here who died himself last year from COVID-19. And we're also hearing that 2 Ukrainian nationals, actually the 2 who died at this spot were from Ukraine. We have no idea yet if they were refugees, but they're believed to have been working in the construction site that you can see around me. I can see in the buildings bullet holes. You saw bullet holes next to a window, and apparently some children were actually at the window when the attack was taking place. So more near misses, more people injured there. And as you said, this past week has seen more terror attacks than at any time since 2006, with 11 people killed. What's also interesting is that the attacks have taken place across the country. So Beersheba in the south, Hadera in the north, and now Bnei Brak in the center of the country. It's taken place. The victims have included Arab Israelis, Jewish religious, secular. So really, I think the message is that unfortunately these terror attacks can take place at any time and at any place and targeting anyone.
Finally from us today, Japan is welcoming the arrival of cherry blossoms. It's a harbinger of the spring season every year, of course, but after 2 years of strict pandemic restrictions, Japanese citizens are finally getting the chance to visit cherry blossom parks while still maintaining social distancing and mask mandates. We're going to leave you with those seasonal visuals today. Thanks for watching WION's live broadcast from Washington, D.C. I'll see you again soon, and stay with WION. World is One.
This is right, Arab.